Hello, everyone. Welcome to Synchronic Saturdays with Meghan and Crystal. We're happy to be back. We've sort of been traveling and busy with random things like the past few weeks. So we're happy to be back and jump in. Today, we're going to be discussing extroverted thinking. Go listen to last episode 28, where if you haven't already, where we talked about demystifying extroverted thinking. And today we're going to be talking more about the higher manifestations of extroverted thinking. So if you're not sure what we mean by that, go listen to episode 14, where we talk about high vibe and low vibe cognitive functions. I also recently did a video about why you're probably average, where I'll link that below as well. I sort of just discussed how each of these cognitive functions exist across a spectrum of manifestation. And today we are going to be talking about the better, higher, more evolved manifestations of TE. So yeah, how's it going, Crystal?
It's going well. How about you?
Good. So just to get us all on the same page, extroverted thinking is a extroverted judging function. And so extroverted functions are objective in nature. So, and thinking means logical. Sorry, I'm trying to remember how I said this in my head. Logical rationalizations. So logical reasoning statements. That's what I was trying to say. So any sort of objective logical reasoning statement is under the realm of TE, and TE naturally seeks efficacy. So it wants things to work. So higher manifestations of TE gets it done. It works. It makes a judgment, an objective judgment, using its logical reasoning, and it makes it work. So that's just sort of the basis. And we're going to be obviously unpacking this throughout the episode, but that is the basic definition of TE.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So since Crystal is a TE user, do you have anything that you want to bring up here at the beginning?
Yeah. I guess like to start off, basically, I feel like it's really important to connect that like TE, the best of TE is connected to when it's also like valuing the connection to FI and kind of viewing efficacy as something that's beneficial to not just itself, but that anyone would want, because everyone has an FI like need that they need to fill and like such like that. And what's on my mind today is I'm thinking about how like a lot of very friendly TJs, if you don't know type very well, can be like mistyped as like very philanthropic and like very like FJs. Like people are like, oh, they must be like feely because they're thinking about like what's best for everyone. But I want to emphasize again, like in previous episodes, that both FE and TE seek mutual benefit of some sort. It's just different types of benefit. So I think that's like a jumping off point that I want to emphasize again.
So yeah, I think what I want to say there is that to minimize confusion, we've said before that extroverted feeling seeks mutual benefit. And the reason why I chose the word benefit there is because benefit is a more emotional word. It's like a value judgment. Is it beneficial? Is it not beneficial?
Okay.
So the reason why FE is mutual benefit is because it creates mutual value for all. It is objective value. Whereas for extroverted thinking, it's efficacy, or you could say mutual efficacy as well, because it's not just thinking about, is this going to work for me? It's thinking about, does this work across the whole system, between two parties, between different groups? So if things work, generally people are pretty happy about that. So it could,
exactly. Yes.
So it could create a value, but the goal of TE is not necessarily to make everybody happy. It is to make it work.
It is to create good for everyone, but that doesn't necessarily correlate with their like precise like happiness or value the way with FE it would be. For TE, it's more like do you have all your logical ducks in a row? Basically, that's what
Yeah.
you're one.
One thing to sort of compare TJs and FJs is that FJs, they might be thinking, I want to just make sure everyone's happy and that everybody ends up with something that they find valuable out of the situation. And if FE does that really well, then they might find, oh, well, it looks like we made the system run more smoothly. That's great. But FJs were not thinking, oh, I need the system to run more smoothly. They're thinking about the people. They're thinking about creating value. Whereas TJs, they aren't thinking about necessarily making everyone happy. They're thinking about, we got to make sure that this works.
And then by deduction,
doing that,
by doing it,
makes people happy.
Therefore, logically speaking, will become happy. But it's not like the happiness was the focus of what they were doing. It's more like, logically, I know at the end of the day, if you have this shit taken care of, you will be, by proxy, happier. But FJs are like, hey, like they like are reaching for and like targeting your happiness like very directly. And I think that it's very hard because, yeah, like as you said, as a result of FE valuing everyone being happy, yeah, the system might run more smoothly. And like TE, when everyone's like things running smoothly, then everyone will be happy. So it's like tail ends, but it's like the process and the order with which these are prioritized.
Yeah.
If you're an FJ or TJ. And because if you have a smile on your face does not mean that you are an FJ just smiling while you're doing this shit, you know?
And I think it's important to realize that both high vibe of extroverted feeling and extroverted thinking, since they are both judging functions, they both do a fine job at making conclusions and making decisions about the external world. And they both can work well, but their intentions are different and the way they work is slightly different. But if you're looking at just the higher manifestations, it can be really hard to tell the difference because there is going to be, it is going to create happy people. Like high vibe TE does create happy people.
Yeah, wait, Megan, I think we mentioned this in the Facebook group once, and you also personally told me this example. But like, you went recently traveled, and you were staying with an INT friend, and we talked about this example. Do you want to maybe go into the example? Because
I just was going to share that this INTJ that was a friend of my friend's, I was staying with her and I didn't know her well, but she was being very hospitable in a way that maybe an FJ would not. Like
what? TJs can be hospitable? Whoa.
Like for example, when I first got there, I was saying, like, I asked my girlfriend who was there, like, are you hungry? Like, we haven't eaten, like, I might order something. And then the INTJ just goes, well, anything in the fridge you're welcome to have. And it's like, okay, so she did not make me food. She didn't say, do you want this? Do you want this? Do you want this? But she's just like, anything in the fridge you're welcome to have. Okay. That was like TE. And then also she saw I was hungry and she just like said, you could do this if you want. And also she asked us if we wanted any wine because she was getting herself a glass of wine. And whenever she filled up her glass of wine, she walked around and poured wine, just offered to anybody who needed a refill just because she was already up. And then, you know, when she left for work in the morning, it was like, oh, there's coffee on the pot, by the way. And then left. So, I mean,
yeah.
So, do you want to explain why that's relevant?
Yeah, okay. So basically, like, we were comparing and contrasting to how FJs will be like, oh, like, do you want me to make you some toast or do you want me to do this for you? Like, things like that. It's very different than like, because like for me, I really like, because I'm a TE user, the alternate, because the TJ will just give you the choice to speak up for what you want. Like, here are the available options that you can like go get yourself, but I'm not going to go out of my way to try and figure out what you want in advance of you just telling me. But it's very
hospitable. If they were already up, they will have no problem grabbing it for you.
Yeah. Because like for TJ, I think that they're trying to tell you what the logical options you have are and let you make your own decision as to what you want without feeling like putting pressure on themselves to try and meet you in advance or anything. And I think that in the long run, this like doesn't build resentment of I do, because I feel like I always get this argument with FJs who are like, I do everything for you. And they're like, I'm like, I never even fucking asked for it though. Like why you, and I just don't get in this argument with TJs because I see they have these boundaries that don't like let them like put themselves in situations where like they like I just feel like TJs never assume about what you want. They just kind of wait for you to tell them. They just go, oh well, maybe they might want coffee, but I'm not going to go out of my way to guess because that's effort for me. Therefore, I will tell them coffee on the pot. And I think that preserving that effort is actually pretty important to making efficacy run because it all operates on energy. Like if you have the energy to try and make something nice for everyone, you're not going to be as burnt out and tired of like doing unnecessary emotional labor. And I know it sounds like weird to like think that asking someone if they want you to make toast for them is emotional labor, but that stuff like adds up
Yeah.
time and I think creates like a snowball effect. But I think TJs are always like, well, if I already was acting on my own FI to get myself wine, it's not that much out of my way to go ask other people if they want wine because I'm getting wine myself. But if I'm sitting here and I feel like I feel like they don't feel like pressure to like, oh, get out of my way and not think about what I want so I can think about what other people want. Like, what if they want wine? Like, TJ's like, first, they put on their oxygen mask to make sure their needs are taken care of. Then they have enough like oxygen to go and help other people. So that's like how I kind of think of it. Like when I look at what TJs do to help people, they never miss helping themselves. And I think that's really important for sustainability logically, because if you aren't putting yourself on the map, then you can't continue to operate in a way sustainably and persistently to also help other people. So that's why, to me, it's like hospitable in a totally different way because I feel like FJs try to anticipate needs and try to meet them. And I think that they also have a better awareness of them than maybe a TJ would. But at the same time, I feel like they don't leave room for remembering that they only have so much energy to give to where it seems sometimes like they give inconsistently to where they'll either give a lot to me or get mad at me for having needs. And like, I don't personally enjoy that. But I think for TJs, I always kind of know what I'm going to get because they're always keeping their energy levels in check. And I associate that with, I guess, high vibe TE because
well, I think that, or sorry, go ahead.
I was done. Basically, they're making themselves as efficient as possible by keeping their FI in check. So what are your thoughts on that?
I just was going to say that when an FJ is being hospitable versus a TJ, you might feel a little bit of pressure from the FJ because even though an FE user is thinking about everybody else's emotions, that doesn't mean that their emotions are kept inward. Like you're going to feel maybe their anxiety or maybe their desire to please you. You're going to feel that because it's kind of impossible for an FE user to completely hide their emotions.
That's true.
Like even if they're trying, and like even if it's super genuine and they do want to help you, I think a lot of FJs realize that if you are staying in somebody's house, you might feel like you don't want to overstay your welcome or you don't want to ask for too much. And the reason why FJs are super open is because they want people to feel welcome. They want them to feel like you can act on even your minor needs. So, for example, like maybe you kind of want a cookie, but you don't want it enough to go get it yourself. You might need some prompting from the FJ to be like, are you sure you don't want a cookie? Come on, I'll just get it for you. Some people need that prompting because they don't feel like it's okay to just go get it. And the FJ is just trying to make it the most hospitable environment ever. But on the other hand, TJs, I think, don't want anybody to feel obligated. They say what's there. They like logically explain like what is available, what they are willing to give you, / also like they expect other people to voice their needs.
They do.
Like TJs are not going to be guessing what your needs are. If you can't voice them, then they might as well not exist. Like
Yeah, basically. And it's like to streamline it to be as efficient as possible, because TJs are thinking, to go with your example of, are you sure you don't want a cookie? They don't know to what extent you actually want or don't want a cookie. And if you don't want the cookie enough to say you want the cookie, why should they give you the cookie if you might not even value the cookie that much? So it's like,
Mm,
if you say it, it's a guarantee that you want the fucking cookie. And like, then they
yeah.
act on it. But if it's like, like, well, someone else could want the cookie more than them. If they don't only kind of want it and they only said it because I kept obligating them, then I don't know if that's efficient. TJs are they like, every TJ I know has feared obligating someone and like pressuring them, because they literally like, I don't want someone to feel pressure. Oh my god, like that's like their worst nightmare, because I think that to them it dilutes the fi of someone to be like, oh well, like they think people are so sheep that they can be like, oh well, if someone else says, are you sure you don't want the cookie, maybe I should want the cookie, then I therefore should do this. They like don't want anyone's free will to be taken away, basically, is what I've seen off of TJ. So they're like just not gonna like try to put pressure on you and say like, well, I think you should want a cookie, is what they hear when someone keeps asking them, do you want
Another thing that I really value that goes hand in hand with that about TJs at their best is that if I'm having a bad day, or if I'm thinking about something, or if I like receive a text that gives me anxiety or whatever, I don't feel like I have to hide those emotions or like not talk about it. Like if I don't want them to ask me about it and I don't want to talk about it, I don't I don't feel like I have to hide those, because pretty much to be around a TJ, they are not going to care what emotion you have. Like they leave room for your FI pretty much to be going through whatever it's going through without trying to change that. Where an
mm-hmm.
FJ, for example, if you get a text and your face drops a little, maybe it's just you forgot that you had a dentist appointment. Maybe it's not even that big of a deal. Maybe your face just drops a little. The FJ was like, oh, what was that? Are you okay? Or like
It's like, is that your
they want to
business?
know. And or maybe it's something that is a bigger deal. Like if you were to just say, oh, it's just the dentist, then maybe they'd say, okay, not a big deal. One thing though about FJs though is that if you say you don't want to talk about it, they will respect it. They might say, are you sure? But they will respect it. So just say, I don't want to talk about it. But anyway, if
Yeah,
it
and like, see,
is,
it's funny because for me as an FI user, I like hate having to clarify that I don't want to talk about something if I don't. And like, I mean, like, it's like depending on the situation, I guess. But if it's like a really intense situation and I don't even know where to begin, and then like, because I'm like, well, like even with my F user friends, it's gonna take too long to explain to them, so I don't want to talk about it. But feeling like they're kind of like, hello, like I'm still here, because I'll like tune out almost if I'm like stuck in my
yeah.
emotions and having to say,
FJs just won't be able to ignore the fact that you're upset, and they
mm,
can't stand the idea that you don't feel comfortable sharing with them, or that they didn't make you feel like they weren't welcoming enough. But
it's
if
really
you just say, I don't want to, then they'll respect it. But the thing is that FJs cannot ignore that little shift in emotion that you just did. And so they will be aware that you won't be able to hide from them. But like TJs, it's almost like they're not emotionally nosy. Like they aren't like tuning in to like, are you feeling okay? Are you not feeling okay? Because they almost like trust that you'll say something if it mattered. And if it doesn't matter, I'm just going to leave you be and kind of leave you alone.
yeah. And they also, because their feeling is like lower down, they like might not even notice just how like the slight drop in expression. Like I found it's
Yeah.
very for me to continue doing what I was doing and be dying inside, and a TJ might eventually notice something's wrong but still not say anything. Like, and they've said before, like, it took me a second to realize something was off. I think FJs are like, sixth sense, wait, are you okay? I'm like, yo. So I used to be like really annoyed by like feeling obligated to like share my emotions, and so I used to like really stan TJs because they were the only people that like let me hide from the world when I was feeling bad, and they like totally enabled that. And I think that I think that's useful in a lot of cases more than people realize, because I think it gives you a sense of privacy so you can fully process your
Yeah.
emotion before you share it and then put it on maybe other people more than you realize. So I think that
That's one thing. They respect your privacy, your emotional privacy.
and why do you think emotional privacy matters, Megan, as an FJ? What is your philosophy on that? Because I can say why it matters, because I mean, I use FITE, but what have you learned, I guess, about the concept of emotional privacy as an FJ yourself?
Well, so it's like, okay, so like as an FJ, I'm not going to be able to ever ignore what somebody's emotions is, and that's just how it is. And I used to feel more like it was my responsibility to make them feel like it was okay to talk about it, because I do know that most emotions, all you really need is to just let it out and talk to somebody who understands and loves and sees you. And
Mhm.
that's really going to just transform the emotion. And yes, you need to process it, but I do know that most times really talking about it is all you need to do, and it's going to solve it. And there's nothing really to solve. There's nothing really to process. And so that's why that, is my philosophy as an FJ. But I
But
know that there's been times where like maybe I'm really tired or I'm stressed about something, but it's also like a family member's birthday and I have to go, and I don't have the energy to look as though I'm super happy to be there and super happy to see them. And my emotions have nothing to do with them at all, nothing to do with how much I love them. But I'm aware that it might seem like I don't care about them or whatever, just because something else is going on. I think that FI really understands the complexities, is that you might be feeling 10 different things at once. You might be feeling happy to be there for your family, but also tired because you didn't sleep last night, or like there's like multiple things going on. And I think that FI um, doesn't try and figure it out because they know how complicated it is, and they don't judge you for it. And like, I don't know, I'm thinking about how like my ESTJ grandma told me, she was like, you're always going to love your family, but you are not always going to like them. And that's normal.
oh my
Like
God,
she
yeah,
always told me things like that. And I think that there's sort of this,
high vibe TE quote, I think.
really?
Yes. Keep going though.
Yeah.
I will.
And she always sort of explained that to me. And I remember I would say, well, I like you. And she was like, oh, no, you don't. And I was like, yeah, I do. And then she was like, did you like me? She's like, did you like me when I put you in timeout? I was like, yeah, of course. And then she's like, oh, no, you didn't. You're full of shit. Like,
It's so
I,
interesting. I forgot about that anecdote because you've told me this anecdote before.
yeah. I
But
don't know
dude,
if she said full of shit back then, but she does say that a lot.
no, it's funny because I think I'm like, it's like kind of like, oh, you always love your family, but you won't always like them. I certainly feel that about you. You don't always like me
Yeah.
either. When I'm being like a bitch, you're like, I don't like you very much right now. But
Yeah. Well, I think that FI, and I know we're talking about TJs right now, but like it's still the
connected
same
to FI
axis
though. It's like
of
connected so much to
TE
FI.
and FI, but FI will like not understand that at any given moment you might feel something different, but it doesn't necessarily negate the overall FE between you two. Like if I show up to a family function and I don't want to be there at all because I, want to be working on something or I'm worrying about school, that's my personal FI at that moment. It has nothing to do with the FE between us. And I always just feel like when I see my TE user relatives that they don't expect anything from me, and they know that I'm there, or they know TJs have this attitude of like, I'm there when you need me. Like, that's it. Like, if you need me, let me
That's actually
know.
funny because that's exactly how my ENTJ friend tries to be there for me. She says, "Oh, I'll be here when you need me" or something if I'm like sad. And then it's like, "Hi," like, and then she was going through a hard time, and I said the same thing. And then she was like, "Hey, can I call you?" Like, she will request my time and like do it in a certain way. Um,
Uh-huh.
so yeah, but it's like funny because I think that the idea of like privacy is so like important in a sense because also like we're so connected these days with like social media. And I think the idea that we can have any emotions that we can feel to ourselves, they don't have to be explained, justified, or displayed, is really appealing, I think, especially to TE and FI users. I think that high vibe TE kind of reminds us that we do still live in our own worlds, and that's like okay. But yeah, like
there are a couple things I need to say, I think, before we move on, is that so for high vibe TE, just like all the other high vibe functions, what you start to see is that the opposite in their axis is sort of integrated within the function. So like high vibe FE has a lot of TI integrated in it. And we've talked about this before. We've sort of noticed this as we explored this. So if FI is about what matters and FE is about, mutual benefit. So TE is going to incorporate the sort of FI, what matters. And so TE, if it's about making things happen and it's about efficacy and making things work, then high vibe FE is, well, what are you making work? Was it worth your time? High vibe or high vibe TE, did I say FE? High vibe TE is about, well, this was worth it to me. This mattered to me. It's like their values are more pure and more true to who they are. Maybe low vibe TE might be really good at business, but you're actually manipulating and scamming people. Then, well, that's not great. Sure, you can make something work, but was it even worth doing? Like high vibe TE is going to have that little bit of FI that knows exactly what matters to them and is able to make just the right things work that should work, or like that is worth their time and energy and effort.
Yeah, and I think it's funny because like people, I feel like, don't look at FJs and like see the underlying TI behind everything they do, and also with TJs, you don't see that underlying FI that is like there at all times. So yeah, I think the best of these high vibes is that they integrate those functions, but people don't give people enough credit for this, and I think that it's interesting.
Wait, which people? Like TJs?
Yeah, people, I'm talking the general populace, don't see the FI root for anything good that TE does. But
yeah. Well, I have a question that I think might lead into that. Is we've talked a lot about relationships here, and I think a lot of times when people talk about TE, they talk about them under the lens of making money or business and stuff. And I think that's just the cheap and easy way to think about TE. Like, just as I've said before that FE could be really good at business, TE could be really good at relationships. But I think that the status quo for how businesses and the status quo for how relationships are can make that hard to see. But you can't have a good relationship without good TE. You can't have a good business without good FE. Because let me just explain this really quick. And I know I've said this in another video, but if your business has bad FE, then you're making products that the people don't want. You don't know your customers. You're making something just because you want to make it, and it might not solve any problem in the world. And people might not even want to buy it from you. So you failed. And if you are in a relationship and you have very bad TE, then you don't know how to create a system of constant communication, your little verbal agreements, your boundaries, and you don't know how to do that in a way without constantly triggering each other, constantly stepping on each other's toes and boundaries. You don't know how to voice your boundaries. You don't know how to state your needs. You don't know how to solve problems in the relationship. There's so many things that bad TE problems in a relationship, because really TE, high vibe TE in a relationship that is capable of trusting and loving is able to say, that's not okay with me. This is okay with me. This is how I like it. This is the way I like to be touched. I would like to try this. Like obviously that's like kind of like even like with sex or whatever, like an FE user might just, oh sure, whatever you want, babe, or whatever. Like TE is like, okay, I'm going to figure out a way to make me and you happy, and I'm going to make this work.
Yeah, because they're like, they want everything to be like a fuck yeah. They want the purest FI. They want you to be so enthusiastic about consenting to things, about saying what you're okay with. And I can see how the expectation for TE can be very daunting though, because some people, just based on their environmental and how they grew up and just like their own like habits and like personalities, aren't used to like speaking those boundaries, especially if your TE isn't that good. But I feel like TE users value that sort of verbal like agreement in order to make
Yes.
sure everyone's FI is as pure and everyone is as comfortable as about being open about their personal needs as possible.
Yeah.
Because
Whereas relationships with two FE users will have a lot of unsaid agreements that,
yeah, it's like, oh, I guess we're doing this now because we've been doing it and we just somehow randomly started doing it. And TE is like, but how did we start this pattern? What is the
mm,
origin and how do we get out of it? Oh my God. Like TE is like solution. So
TE is the function and the only function that can be used to fulfill very specific FI needs and
yes.
emotions and desires.
Yeah. And I think
FE
yeah.
cannot solve FI problems. Like TE is the only thing that can solve specific FI problems. And so high vibe TE in a relationship is going to be um, meet your needs specifically.
Dude, it's like blowing my mind. I know we talked about this, but I'm just like making so many parallels now. But okay, so two things. I have an ENTJ boss who I work remotely with, and she literally has like bi-weekly check-in with her husband meetings where they talk about childcare exchange and does it feel fair and what are your thoughts and da da da. And I'm just like, yo, like I know that roommate relationships having those monthly meetings is already a lot, but like relationship meetings where you're just like, tell me what your thoughts are about, you know what I mean? Like it's just like, yo, it's just actually kind of
Oh my
cute.
God. I
I
kind
can't
of want to try that, but like
get into that honestly. Like, like
let's
I'm
be
like,
really real here. Like no shade to my girlfriend if you're watching this, but my girlfriend as an INFJ has a TE blind spot. I feel like if I suggested that to her, she would think something was wrong or that I was going to break up with her. Like I feel like FJs would, in general, FJs would have a hard time with something like that.
yeah,
Comment below, let me know. But like I feel like most FJs, if they were told, okay, we're gonna have to start having meetings to discuss our relationship, and FJ would be like, oh my God, what's wrong? Like, am I not meeting your needs? Am I not good enough? Wait, what are you thinking? Like, what's the problem? Because like
but like,
the thought would think that there's a TI problem that you're trying to solve, as opposed to just general upkeep.
yeah, like for TE, well, we have dentist appointments and doctor's appointments. Why can't we have relationship appointments? Because it's like, oh, like if you expect to like have a meeting in which you'll hear good things about you and bad things about you, which they also emphasize like strengths, weaknesses, you know, like just keep
That's
it going.
why most relationships don't run like a well-oiled machine, unlike how corporations do. You have to meet with your boss, you have to meet with your team, you have to make sure those relationships are okay, but families don't always do that.
It's inspired me to where I'm like, when I get married, if my husband's not okay with that, I'm like, yo, like we aren't gonna be able to like have kids together and do and get our bills paid or do any of that shit because we have to do it with two people. And FI and TI needs need to be met. So we need to talk about it. Like fuck that. Like I'm just so about it. Like I'm just like, should I even have these with some of my closest friends? Hey Megan, so like
I would
what
be down to start having a friendship meeting.
yeah, see that guys this is happening in real time. We're like deciding in real time what's up.
So another question slash topic I want to bring up is that, so since TE is an extroverted function, we've talked a lot about communication. I think that for the extroverted functions, especially judging functions, it is almost like a way of communicating. And I think that the things that TE thinks to say, the facts or the logical statements it thinks to share, FE does not think to share. FE keeps it all in. And just as we talked before, when we were talking about FE, how useful it is for people to share, hey, you hurt me. Hey, I'm feeling this way. It's also very useful to share those TE sort of things. So can you help me understand what some of those things, TE communication, what that looks like?
TE is like, okay, you hurt me, yeah, whatever. What are we gonna do about it? And a principle that I've kind of learned from having strong TE myself is that if I don't know the solution that I want someone to do or something, I don't have any right to even say anything at a certain point because it's like okay, like
Wait a
maybe
minute. So maybe FE would say, you hurt me, where TE would say like, hey, like I haven't healed this specific trauma, so can we not talk about this topic?
yeah,
Because
yeah,
that is what hurts me. Like
Yeah,
it's sort of explaining the process.
yeah.
But
They like
yeah.
don't make it like you hurt me. Well, like a T user might be like, you hurt me, which okay, like whatever. Therefore, I want you to do this instead, or therefore I think we should do this instead. Like they brainstorm a solution, advance, bring it to the table, and lay it out as like something.
But
Because
not only that, they understand logically how and why that person hurt them based on how the relationship was working or how the business was working and whatever it is, because they see how things were working.
yeah,
They see the cause and effect.
they know the FI of what triggers them and what like minefields there were. So they aren't like surprised necessarily. And I think healthier high vibe TE can like not blame the other person because they also know it's their responsibility in a way to like manage their triggers. But they will just kind of go, you hurt me, but then kind of like skip, like not skip over it, but like be like, okay, I already know she hurt me, whatever. What's next? What would not hurting me look like? This, okay, then we should ask them for that. As opposed to like, I think with Effie, you have to like talk through why you were hurt, and then maybe you might realize you weren't that hurt after all. But like TE is like, if they concluded you hurt them, that's probably not going to change. What is going to change is the behavior to make sure it doesn't happen again or something. So I think that's why I like for myself. Like,
Well, the reason why FE would talk about the emotions involved is to gain a better TI understanding of the other person so that they just get the other person more after that. But they might make the same mistake again if they don't get the person. But TE might think, well, that seems a little too much thinking. Why don't you just tell them what to do?
yeah, because TE assumes you can extrapolate the thought process behind what to do that would make someone not like.
Well, I guess I'm realizing right now as I'm trying to explain this that really the only way that I know, the only way that I know, what is that?
Hmm?
Sorry, I played some music by accident. Okay, the only way that I would know what TE is by knowing what I can't do. And so it's really hard for me to explain it because what I'm seeing is when somebody says, okay, so what are we going to do about it? They have a clear understanding of the cause and effect. Do you think that that's the right term to think about what TE is doing? Because
he knows what behaviors lead to like negative emotions or something. Like they can't help but they can't not notice that. Like for me and TJ's, we both always know, okay, when this person does this thing, it gets me mad, which then makes me yell at them, which then leads to this. And yeah, they just really see the origin at the F5, which everything inefficient began. And I don't think F users sometimes know what they said that got them into the situation they're in now if they're in a fight. But TE is like, I know exactly at what point like everything went downhill or something.
Yeah, see, if I'm in a fight or something with someone, I just feel like I'm falling. I don't know like how I got there, like
It's funny because for me, I'm like, I know that if they say this, it's gonna set me off. Oh shit, they said that. No, I can't not go off. Like I'm like, I can't control myself, but I know my brain why I'm doing this and what they said and what I said that might like it's like in my head mapped out very, very clearly. And I'm like, oh no, my body's still reacting though. Which is why I don't generally get into fights unless it's like a deep, deep, deep FI like trigger.
you know what reminds me of TE is, so I'm taking psychology classes right now, and there's a lot of things where they'll put together frameworks for things. And it's like, oh, this is a framework of good communication. It starts with a question. And then after that, it's this. And it's just like a list. And I would read these things. I'm like, what's the point of this? And there would be like these diagrams of like, okay, this is a framework on good communication. This is a framework for creativity. This is a framework for innovation and like what it is and the different parts of what it is. And I think that that's very TE as well, is looking at something and not just knowing what it is, but knowing like how it works.
Yeah, like
Well.
I think like frameworks instruct you on like how to anticipate like things logically, you know, like because there's guidelines and there's like checkpoints and like things. So like I feel like I've always joked because I'm a TE user that I like when I'm starting to date someone, I like giving them the playbook of how to interpret Crystal Dwan. Like she doesn't like talking about this. She's scared of this kind of thing. She likes this. She this. It's like here's the framework. Here's how to interpret me. It's like, oh no, why'd she do that? Oh, there's a handbook for that.
I feel
Oh,
like it's very TE to think about handbooks like that, which is funny. I'm pretty sure I read this by Lenore Thompson originally, but the whole idea of like TI versus TE is that a TI user, when putting together a new, I mean, like I recently bought a sewing machine. Like if a TI user was to put together, they would just like see the parts and be like, that makes sense to go together and just like do it. But like TE might be more likely to look at the steps in the handbook. Some of it has to do with SE and SI as well, but like in general, TI would like look at the sewing machine and be like, okay, well, there needs to be a way somehow for the needle to be threaded and for the thread to go somewhere. So this clearly looks like this is user friendly. So it clearly looks like this is where the thread goes. It's just like, okay.
and then TE is like steps. Yeah.
Because if you don't look at the steps, then you might miss something. And
Yeah.
like, yeah.
I also think it's interesting because when you said that about TI and how it figures things out like a sewing machine, I think FI is like, well, if I know that Crystal has this trigger because she told me, and then this trigger is happening, and then these components, they fit it together. Like, therefore, we know that Crystal's going to not react well to this.
I hate to do this to you, but I have to go to the bathroom. Will you
Yeah.
talk about TE?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Okay. Anyways, yeah, so like for me, I feel like I like when people can anticipate like my needs because I've clearly laid it out. They've clearly laid out what they don't know, and I've clearly laid out what I know. It makes the whole thing run better because we can extrapolate things about each other and figure them out from there. And this can get tricky, I think, because like if you're not that good at communicating your playbook because you don't keep track of it, then like most people won't really know how to like deal with it. But I think also if users can roll the punches more because if they don't have the playbook, they have other ways of like picking up on your emotions. While I and other TE users don't feel that way. So I think like you kind of need both FE and TE at the same time. But what I want to emphasize is that people knock TE too often for being cold when they're good at other things in relationships that like other people aren't who are using FE. So, we need more appreciation for TE in general. Because, I mean, there's a reason why I was so into the idea of dating a TJ guy when really what I need in a relationship is TE, not TJ specifically, but what they may embody and like push forward, which is encapsulation of TE. So, yeah, that's my take on that. It's kind of funny how like in these episodes we have to emphasize both TE and FE at the same time to compare and contrast because otherwise you can't really like logically understand them without knowing what they do without knowing like what one lacks and what one doesn't, which in of itself is very I think TE. So yeah, I'll get into that. I was saying how like to remember that while TE is good at like, things like laying out clear frameworks for communication, they have to do that because FE doesn't have that, but FE also could pick up things like changes in moods. So they can go case by case pretty well. But for me and a TE, or just TE users in general, we don't pick up mood shifts that sensitively. It's more mechanical for us to figure out what someone's deal is. Like if I logically can deduce, oh, this triggers them, then it gives me something to go off as because I'm not going to know in the moment if it's a new trigger or something.
Well, can you pick up changes in thought patterns?
I think so.
Well, there was an ENTJ girl I knew in college who I remember she said that she could she felt like she could read people's minds or like that she will like just guess at what people were thinking and then they would say something and then she'd be like, yeah, I knew you were thinking that. Like And so I didn't know like what sort of things you pick up on. And I also just noticed that TJs, for example, when they're giving a speech, a lot of times you'll hear the phrase, and I know what you're thinking, blah, 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 blah. And see, like, I never say anything like that, but like TJs always do.
Yeah. Like, but FJs are like, I'm sorry if that's mean, but blah, 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 or something. That's what they say instead, FJs. But yeah, TJs, they do say, I know what you're thinking, because I think they can anticipate like where your train of thought's going to lead to. And I think that's why it's easy. Okay, so like in a fight, I know what someone's thinking, and therefore I know when it's going to escalate into like different actions or different things said because I can see where it's going. And so, like, and this is why also I'll be like, oh, you said this differently than usual about you. Like, you're like, I feel like I didn't do anything differently. I'm like, well, it came out differently. So your thought patterns have changed, but you're not conscious of that. Like, I've done this to you. Like, where you're harsher than usual and you're not sure, but I can tell you because it sounds different. And I can tell that your thought patterns are more succinct and in line with, say, FI.
I can never tell what people are thinking about me during a fight.
Yeah, like, I can tell the difference between if someone's just confused and frustrated with me versus if they're like actually like super deeply angry and triggered. Like I can see the extent to which their thoughts are like negative about me, like in the moment.
If I'm in a fight with someone though, it's like if I could tell they're angry at me and I don't also feel a bunch of guilt and shame for something I did, and I know for a fact that I did the best I could, then I don't know why they're mad at all. And I'll just think, well, the only way to solve this is to talk about it, talk about our feelings.
See, I'm like, if I don't have a game plan for what I'm gonna say, I'm like, why am I gonna talk about it? Because then I'll probably end up
Like I get stuck in things like that where like maybe I wasn't conveying my thoughts well, and so I came off wrong, or like I didn't think to voice certain facts that might have been helpful for the other person to make sure they didn't get me incorrectly. But
yeah,
as opposed to trying to figure out what they might be thinking and addressing those thoughts, I just like get sad, and like the only solution I can think of is talking about our emotions so that we can get back on the same page.
Yeah, we've had this. Yeah.
Where maybe like stronger TE or like TE high vibe would know the right things to say to address this sort of miscommunication.
Yeah, definitely. Like we can be like, oh, I know that you were thinking I meant this is this, but I actually meant this. Like I've never had a fight with a TE if I escalate because they always can catch me before I get super angry.
Well, the reason why FE users escalate is because we don't understand. Like, seriously. I think so many people will act like FJs are evil without realizing how dumb we are sometimes.
People think that FJs are evil because they assume you also have TE and FE together, you know? Like, just as how people think TJs are, like, cold because they assume they have the FE to know that they are seeming cold. When they're like, well, am I supposed to do more emote? And then FJ's like, what's supposed to do more? Read your mind? And it's like, yeah, actually, some people can read minds, which is where that came from. So it's like not your fault. But I think TJs are not given enough credit for how they can read people's minds and they can stop things from happening. They kind of live like very unbothered lives if they want to because they know how to not piss people off. Like they literally just live in isolation to some regard, you know? Like, I just think that TJs are very good at like it's funny because one of the most popular people I know in like my like friend circle in LA is an ENTJ girl, and no one realizes she's an ENTJ except for me because of her type, but she literally knows how to say the right thing all the time. She doesn't go out of her way to be like fussy and like mom friend like an ENFJ would, but she does not fit the cold stereotype because she just knows how to like keep out of people's way. And you have to like get really close to her before she shares any real FI with you about what she's really feeling. So some might say it seems kind of fake, but I just think she's very strategic about knowing her impact on people and their thought patterns and how to deal with it. It's very interesting to like have an influencer friend like that. But
I think saying the right thing is very important because like I think whenever there is a miscommunication, like an FJ would just think, oh no, we're misreading each other. Okay, let's untangle this with let's untangle this by
Yeah,
discussing.
sometimes we don't have the patience for that, and so TJs just go, okay, I'm gonna do this, you do that, done. And it's like, that's kind of cold, but sometimes it works. So
Well, I don't know, like, and I have said like, oh, I won't read your mind. And like, but I don't really know how that works, or like how you would be able to read someone's.
I feel like it's because you're tracking their FI at all times. Like it manifests as good TE because you're always aware of what band-aids can be put on to like FI wounds and keeping track of FI wounds. Like it only works because TJs are using FI at all times to look at the train of someone's FIs and like what triggers them and like what triggers all people, what triggers themselves. And so I think it's because they have spent like a lifetime swimming in that, while an FJ
It's like
thinks
they know the basic things, like, okay, like, correct me if I'm wrong, but so I have this sewing machine looking at me, so I'm going to try and use that as an example of like TE. If there was a problem where something was snagged, TE might have an idea at what that problem might be, because TE tracks over time, probably like, okay, so this is how the machine works. It pulls
Mhm.
this through down here. I don't know, like, over, like, it seems like any, whether it's a person, an organization, a family, whatever, TE seems to know how things work based on what their needs are and what their motivation is, which is
Mhm.
FI.
Mhm.
And then if something doesn't work, would TE know perhaps what need wasn't met, or perhaps what, where the disconnect was, and
Yes,
then
they would.
so then they would be able to fix it.
Yeah, they would, because they're tracking what works and what doesn't work at the same time. So when something doesn't work, they can fit it into the category of things that don't work or things that work and like pair them together instantly like that. So it is like they view people like machines. They go,
Yeah.
this makes this machine crash. This makes this machine function again. Like it's funny because,
Yeah.
like dating someone who has T and FI like me, and he was like, oh, so what are your love languages? And I think love languages is like a very TE thing to like, okay, some people like words of affirmation. This is what makes their machine work. Some people like physical touch. That's what makes their machine work. If they don't have it, then this happens. Like, I feel like it's like they organize functionality based on that. They organize on people get turned on or turned off by different things. And like they kind of like look at all that together. And I definitely
I
know that
also,
my ability to read people is very FITE because I'm like, okay, well, this childhood trigger of theirs seems really important. I don't think about how often they talk about it. I think about the energy and like their face and all that stuff or something. It's very different than FE moods.
yeah, and a couple things.
Also, I gotta go soon.
Oh, that's fine. I was just, a couple things. I was gonna say that I also feel like the whole idea in like dating, where people say they want someone to figure them out, or like, ooh, I want to figure you out. I feel like that seems very TE and FI to me,
Yeah, because you're
because
observing their patterns, thought patterns, actions, all of that. It's very high vibe TE. Because
I've
the
never
whole
done that.
I want to figure out seems so romantic because it's like, oh, so you want to know how to treat me right and do all these things, and then like to me it sounds cute or something when
I've
someone's like,
never wanted to be figured out. In
you
fact,
want
I
to,
kind of hate that.
oh, because I'm like, oh yeah, like because you're so obsessed with making the perfect relationship function just like me.
I just wanted to be seen, which I guess is similar, but,
I feel like
and then,
figuring out is a way of being seen, but it's like a different lens because like through actions or something. Like, well, my top love language is acts of service, so I like being given and done things to. So,
and I just, one last thing I want to address on this too is we've talked a lot about sort of TE as seeing people as machines, or organizations as machines, or families or businesses, or countries, governments as machines. So I think that's a good way to look at it. But there's also sort of a stereotype of like STPs or any sort of TI users being mechanics, or like getting machines. So
they're mechanics, but they're not mechanical. I don't
Well,
know.
I guess I just want to address, in case anyone's confused, like what's the difference between TE looking at things like machines versus TI? Because I think there's a lot out there that would make you think that it's TI that looks at things like machines. What are your
I'll say
thoughts
that
on that?
TI looks at how like a thing works, as opposed to TE looks at how everything has in common things that work. So they go, oh well, like they cross parallel more. I feel like, and like TI
Mhm.
will just get really good at like knowing how this one sewing thing works. And the way TE would extrapolate maybe how sewing machine works is they think about how other similar things have worked, and how that's why they like directions, so they can see how similar the directions are to other directions they've seen before. So they have to like generalize a little more, right? Versus I think TI, if it's like a completely new thing, they don't need to cross parallel. You just go, okay, da da da. I look at what's in front of me and I make it work. TE is
Mhm.
like, ah, yes, this machine, this bed frame is like putting together a car engine, or huh,
Okay.
it's like TE needs to have ways of practicing. And I also think that it just views everything as, okay, like they need directions and clear cut guidelines. And so they create the guidelines over time from like other things they've seen. But I feel like TI users are like, let's get in and gritty. And okay, this is how this one specific thing works. Cool. Like they don't think about the
Okay.
whole overarching system and generalize.
I think I get it. And this is what allows TE to make good guesses. Whereas TI might need to spend a little bit of time with the object to figure out how it works and stuff like that. Where TE can make really good guesses that end up working, and also like solve problems that have never been solved before by taking information that they've learned from other things, or like maybe you've worked in the corporate world and then you moved to a nonprofit. Like TE would be like, well, I learned this from this, and so let's try it
Yeah,
here. Like,
not letting any one of their skills go to waste. TE hates waste because it likes mutual efficacy. But I think they think everything they've learned is an experience to take on to the next one and be like, well, now I know how this system works. I can then extrapolate what this one might be. Like they do guess better because they're always trying to guess. I'm trying to
yeah, they
guess.
are always guessing.
I guess more than I think an NTP because I use TE. So I'm always trying to be like, well, last time something like this happened was when I thought of this one obscure thing and did it. Like,
And I think that you're right about it knowing what works and also what doesn't work. And I don't think that that's just NE. Like TJs, even in like NTJs, will also know like, well, that doesn't work, so I'm going to rule that out. Almost like process of elimination, like understanding all, like extroverted judging functions are focused on the breadth of the thing. So anything that could work as well. It's not the same as intuition of looking at what could be. It's just deducing things by
yes,
understanding if it works or if it doesn't work.
yeah, like they don't know inherently how much something works or doesn't work. They can only do that over time from like observing and like extrapolating from other things that over time proved to work to a certain extent or not. It is like kind of like a computer algorithm in a way, because computer algorithms only work because they pull information from multiple sources over time. Like,
That makes sense when you say over time, because extroverted judging functions are used in conjunction with introverted perceiving. So they're J, like, I mean, you use it too, but really we're talking about TJs. They're using either NI or SI as like sort of their depth of perception over time. That's helping the TE do its job.
mhm.
So yeah, so I can relate to that, and how I've learned more and more about people and emotions over time based on my NI perception.
And I know, like, I feel like if you just had a lot more TJ friends, that's what you would get. Is actually better
Yeah,
almost,
I
because I think
don't.
that my TE isn't that great. And I think everything you've learned from TE has been because I have the emotional perseverance to tell you. But I feel like if you went and you said these things like a TJ now, you get even more information because they have better TI to explain to you exactly how to cross parallel. I'm just like, I don't know, I just kind of do it. So yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways, I gotta go, but
Anyway, thank you guys for watching. If you're interested in figuring out your type, you don't know where to start, Crystal and I have a service where we help people figure out their type. subscribe, download this podcast on iTunes, join the free Facebook group, and thank you for watching. Have a wonderful rest of your day.